Was Buffalo, Minnesota the game of the year? Do we have a new lead back in Kansas City and Tampa Bay? We'll react to that and a whole lot more coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by No House Advantage. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. Nick, busy week 10. Buffalo and Minnesota was wild. We finished the night with a backdoor, not cover, but backdoor have in the San Francisco Chargers game, and a whole lot of stuff in between. How was your week 10 so far?
Awesome week of football. Terrible week for my picks. Hung around in staff picks, but man, the pick'em league that I reference every now and then, rough week. I ended up going 0-5 in the 5 games that were decided by 5 points or less. I needed something to kind of calm my nerves after that. I'm looking up what is the probability of this happening? If you assume each of those are 50-50 games, there's about a 3% chance of going 0-5 in those. So it was one of those weeks, where it felt good, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, the Cowboys are about to blow a 14-point lead. Oh no, Seattle's not going to make this comeback against Tampa Bay. What is happening? The Bears were just up 2 touchdowns. It just felt like, a cascading effect with all these games, but really, really fun Sunday. I mean, other than Browns, Dolphins, Saints Steelers was kind of an ugly one, but for the most part, we got a ton of really competitive games.
Yeah. So I was following along with staff picks, and so if it was not going well for you, it was going pretty well for me because we were opposite a lot. And I think I'm 10-2-1 if I remember correctly on the line that we got. No, I'm 10-3.
Still not bad.
No. I'm right there. I'm 11-2. I actually thought I was on the Niners, but I was on the Chargers. So oops.
Yeah, and we got that one at 7 too, which for some reason I was thinking 6, and maybe we would have pushed that, but just one of those weeks, man. It really was. I felt good coming into the week. Obviously, we had some injuries, that threw everything for a loop. Some numbers moving all over the place, but a lot of surprising results. I think in retrospect. You locked up the Steelers very smartly. They certainly look like the better team for most of the day against the Saints, although that game was tied at the half. New Orleans could not do anything on offense in the second half, but I locked up the Cowboys. I thought this was a fantastic spot coming off the bye, all the injuries to Green Bay. I think you took the Packers in staff picks. You kind of sniffed this out as a bit of a trap game for Dallas. You ended up being right about that, but of all these surprising results, which one to you was the most surprising yesterday?
That the Colts won outright. But then again, we didn't know Matt Ryan was going to start, and we didn't know it until game time, basically, till we saw who was taking the reps before the game. They kind of hinted that Ryan would be back at some point by the way he was stepping up in practice, by the way that they said, okay, Ellinger is no longer locked in for the rest of the year, but they did say Ellinger was going to start. That's a big difference right there because Matt Ryan at least can run a competent offense, and the Raiders do not run a competent defense.
This played out like so many Raiders games have this year. They finally put together a good drive at the end of the game. They go 14 plays with a chance to win the game, and then you go 4 and out, on that final possession as you get closer to the end zone. You just had no faith watching this offense that they were going to punch this in. Huge drop by Foster Moreau on what would have been a touchdown. Admittedly, not the easiest catch, but a catch that, Darren Waller, for example, probably would have made. But right away, you kind of knew the Raiders were in trouble. They start off with 3 straight 3-and-outs, and then they go out on downs on what kind of felt like a desperation type of play when they're already down 10-0. At times it maybe felt like they would complete this comeback. He gave up the long touchdown run to Jonathan Taylor. That's when it really felt like they were in trouble. But at no point did it ever feel like they were going to cover that number. I think we had it at 6.5 in staff picks. That was dead from the start. It was clear the Raiders had no juice here.
Right. Matt, Sam Ellinger got sacked 9 times earlier this year. Matt Ryan was known for getting sacked and fumbling.
Yep.
The Raiders had 1 sack yesterday.
And almost no pressures. And Matt Ryan had a 40-yard run in this game at a really key time. That's the story of the season for the Raiders defense is allowing Matt Ryan to have that kind of run in that spot.
Yep, exactly right. From Vic Tafur covers the Raiders, I believe, for The Athletic. Nate Hobbs, who hasn't played in a couple of weeks, is second on the Raiders team in sacks with 1. It's awful. We mentioned this earlier. The Raiders are in disarray too, but they were lucky they were facing the Colts this week. No, the Raiders are in bigger disarray. You and I were trading notes like earlier. They had a player who led them in tackles and played 62 snaps that retired midweek, middle of the season. I mean, Blake Martinez, whatever. I mean, he's not a great player, but you played him 62 snaps last week, and we wish him well. He retires. What?
Yeah, man, it's a disaster. And we, as of right now, while we record, it's coming up on noon Central Time for me. Josh McDaniels remains the coach of the Raiders. I would not be surprised if at some point in the next 60 minutes that is not the case. He had yet another meeting with Mark Davis, who was in the locker room after this game. That's not ideal. Derek Carr, obviously very emotional after this game. I think he's kind of feels like he's hit rock bottom. But coming into the week, like when we previewed this game on the XM show all week, we kept saying like the Raiders are down to Josh Jacobs, Derek Carr, and Devontae Adams. If you watch this game, that's exactly what it felt like. I mean, force-feeding Devontae Adams. He was the only reliable option. Mac Hollins, has had some big games stepping up with Hunter Renfrow and Waller out this year. Gave them nothing in this game, 2 catches on 6 targets. And you could just feel the desperation on the Raiders side this entire game. Like, I mean, we kind of joked about it all week about how much pressure is on this team to not lose to the joke that is the Colts. And I think they were feeling that. And I think they knew early on, like, we're going to be in trouble. We can't really run the ball on this defense. Josh Jacobs had like 1 long run all day. Other than that, he was bottled up. And you felt the tightness and the desperation from the Raiders really from the jump.
Yeah. And Colts writers were saying like the whole process sucked. The franchise is in crazy shape and Jim Irsay's nutty. And yet they all said positive things about Jeff Saturday. So he was getting team buy-in at the very least. Now, I don't know, if he's a great coach or anything, but as a person, they buy into him. And that matters for a little while. That can carry a little bit of the way. They also rediscovered that, hey, Jonathan Taylor exists. Let's give him the ball 22 times. Weird, strange. Good things happen. He broke off that long run. Paris Campbell was rediscovered, 7 for 76 on 9 targets, got the touchdown. Michael Pittman didn't do a whole lot, but he had 9 targets. This was a functional team. And, Matt Ryan, he earned his criticism earlier, but we could see Ellinger wasn't going to work out. And the fact that the Colts will remain committed to the bit until they weren't was kind of interesting. Had they not made that coaching change, maybe Ellinger would still be starting. But it's clear case that they were better off with Ryan running the show there.
This might have been Matt Ryan's best game of the year. I thought he looked really good in this game, and certainly it changes things when you're not under duress the entire time. Like you said, I mean, the Raiders' defense is just so bad. I mean, just no pass rush. You never really feel like that secondary is capable of making any plays. Obviously, you released Jonathan Abram. Not that he was helping things, but that's kind of more of a talent drain on the defense as well. And watching this game, it's hard to say how much you credit the coaching change, how much you credit Jeff Saturday. My guess is probably not all that much, but the Colts look like the better team. Like that's what it came down to. I don't know if you just remove coaching from the equation, they look like the far more competent team, the team that knew what it was doing, that knows its strengths. And like you said, you get guys like Paris Campbell, Kylan Granson stepping up. Like the Raiders are not getting those secondary 2, 3, 4 guys down the depth chart stepping up each week. It really is a 3-man show for the Raiders, and you can't win in the NFL when it feels like you only have 3 players who are above average on offense.
Yeah, and I don't have any confidence that they're any better at identifying talent in the draft and in free agency now than they did under Gruden, which, there's a lot of fruits of that coming to disaster. They're cutting all of his guys. I don't understand what, parting ways with them mid-season does, what that accomplishes. Unless they're just so super toxic in the locker room or something. But I don't see it. I just don't see it. And it's a mess.
Yeah. To me, I think the Raiders are maybe the second worst team in the league right now. I mean, some of the losses they've had have just been completely inexcusable. It's like you lose to the Colts, you lose to the Jags. I think Houston's maybe the only team we could definitively put below the Raiders right now. And because they have, guys like Devontae Adams on offense, it's hard to think of this team in that context, but they're yet another team that I think coming into the year, we had, maybe they could win 9-10 games. We have to start just completely flipping the way that we look at this team going forward. I think they've proven who they are at this point, and I don't know where they go from here. I mean, you're going to be without Renfrow, you're going to be without Waller. There's no help coming anytime soon, and I mean that if you can't beat the Colts in this situation, I don't know how you expect to beat any other teams really going forward the rest of the year. They do get Pittsburgh, they do get the Rams remaining on their schedule, but they got to go at Denver next week. Then they're at Seattle. Then it's the Chargers. I mean, this could really spiral out of control for a team that's already lost 3 in a row now.
Yep, 2-7. Their only wins are against Denver and Houston at home. So yeah.
Well, and the last 3 losses, the Saints, the Jags, and the Colts. I mean, yikes. Those might be 3 bottom 7 teams.
Yeah. It's similar to the Packers' run of losses, which they show they can still beat the Cowboys, though. So who knows? But
yeah, exactly. Following that logic, then the Raiders will probably beat Seattle in 2 weeks.
Whip off 3 wins in a row or something like that. Colts get to host the Eagles next week. So good luck with that.
All right, let's go, Jeff Saturday.
But at the same time, they weren't a clown show. They ran a competent offense. So I mean, that's
absolutely
that's more than what you can say about pretty much the Raiders or others. So there you go. Let's move on. Let's go all the way back to Thursday night. Carolina versus Atlanta. The slap fight that was that. No, actually, that's not fair because Carolina actually kind of played pretty well in this one, I thought. Deonta Foreman was a workhorse. 31 for 130. The front line for the Panthers sacked Marcus Mariota 5 times. Mariota, I mean, he had the one drive late to kind of get it, to keep this to being a game, but man, he makes some bad decisions, bad decisions under pressure.
This to me felt like Mariota's worst game of the season. I think you come out of this as the Falcons, feeling like maybe you had some momentum. Obviously you're coming off of a loss to the Chargers, but you played okay in that game. And entering this game still very much in the mix in the NFC South. Obviously the Buccaneers winning yesterday morning kind of changes maybe how we view that division going forward. But yeah, this felt like a big step back for Atlanta. And you do have to credit the Panthers. They played well in this game. Another very limited effort for PJ Walker. I don't even think he got the yardage on the long Laviska Shenault touchdown. That ended up being changed to a rushing touchdown for Shenault. So really only barely got over 100 yards did PJ Walker, but made some throws on third downs. And much like we saw 2 weeks ago, Deontay Foreman just running wild all over this Atlanta defense. And, the final score is a little misleading because the Falcons had a chance at the end of this game. They tack on that touchdown. It felt like the game was over. All of a sudden you're like, wait a second, this is a 7-point game. And they force a quick 3 and out, almost had a pick 6 on that drive.
Yes.
And then had a chance. And you're thinking, all right, momentum has shifted. Atlanta, maybe they could get something going here. And those 4 plays ended up going out on downs. Just 4 really ugly downs for Marcus Mariota. Had a play that almost turned into a pick 6 in this game that, kind of reminded me of the old Jameis Winston Florida State play where he's going down. He's like on his back, somehow gets the ball like 30 yards downfield, gets picked. And luckily they ended up calling him down. But yeah, it was not a game where Marcus Mariota had his best stuff. And, I thought Atlanta would win this game. You knew it would be close. That's for sure. I don't think that much separates these teams, but Carolina, continuing to show some fight. However, PJ Walker came out of this game with a high ankle sprain.
Right. So Baker Mayfield's going to get the start. It won't be Sam Darnold. It's at Baltimore. Baltimore's pass defense has tightened up. They were pliable early on in the season. I think those young guys have started to get some experience, started to play better. And this is a team now. This is a pretty good setup for Baltimore.
I think so too, for sure. You would much rather play this team with Baker Mayfield than PJ Walker. I think that is for sure. And, PJ Walker, he hasn't really been doing all that much as a runner. That's always the threat with him, is he's so much more mobile, but really that hasn't been a big part of his game. But I still think you'd rather go back to Baker, who, we have a 5-6 game sample of him just really struggling earlier in the year. So you're right. This completely stacks up well for the Baltimore Ravens. They come out of their bye, and Carolina, it feels like they have a decent amount of juice for a team that still could very well be in the mix for the number 1 pick. But yeah, asking them to go on the road against this Baltimore team that feels like it just continues to pick up steam week after week. I'll go out on a limb and say I don't see this going well for the Carolina Panthers. Yeah,
I will say when I last saw Baker Mayfield, he actually had a good half against the Bengals, albeit in complete utter garbage time. But freed from the shackles of Matt Rule, who knows? Maybe that there's something to be said there. Not that Rule was anti-Baker, though. It's like he was with Terrace Marshall, but he wasn't necessarily that way with Baker Mayfield. Atlanta hosts Chicago. We'll talk more about that side about Chicago in a little bit here too. Let's keep rolling through the week that was in week 10. let's talk about the game in Germany. Let's talk about Tampa Bay. Big win for them. They're now 5-5. Leonard Fournette left with a hip injury. He also threw an interception. Don't let your non-quarterbacks throw the ball. It's cute when the trick play works, but when it implodes like that, it's horrible. They said Adam Schefter reports, though, that Fournette will be able to play when they return from their bye in week 12. We'll see, though, because even before their injury, Rachaad White was getting as many, if not more, carries than Fournette and looked good doing so. 22 for 105, Fournette 14 for 57. Being able to run the ball is something they weren't able to do as a team as a whole earlier this year, and especially in that really rough stretch. And it looks now like, okay, they rediscovered that that's a priority. Looks like that's working for them.
Yeah, that's the clear takeaway from this game is for the first time in seemingly forever, Tampa Bay was able to get the ground game going, and Seattle's defense took a huge step back in this game. The offense didn't play well either, but could not get off the field, letting up gash plays off the ground. Again, I mean, it feels like the script the last 6 weeks for Tampa Bay has been attempt to run the ball early and then realize it's not going to work, and Tom Brady has to drop back and pass every time, and that they finally didn't have to resort to that. They put together 2 back-to-back 13-play touchdown drives in the first half. Seattle just letting up a ton of third downs, a ton of broken coverages. I mean, Tampa Bay was 10 of 15 on third down in this game. Meanwhile, Seattle 1 of 9 on third down. I mean, this felt like a big regression game for Seattle. Geno Smith played pretty badly until the end, was able to tack on 2 late touchdowns, but lost a massive fumble in the red zone, missed some big throws early on. And ironically, it was Seattle that couldn't get anything going on the ground. And this Tampa Bay run defense, I think the Bucs run defense has kind of gone under the radar. I think it's been lumped in with the Buccaneers' other struggles. I mean, that's by no means is the rush defense the issue for Tampa Bay, but
it was for a while though. Carolina and Kansas City ran the ball really well against them.
Yeah, that is true. That is true, I suppose. But Kenneth Walker, 10 for 17 in this game. I mean, I thought this would be at least an average spot for Seattle, and this is one of those games from the jump you just knew Seattle didn't quite have it. It was a different team, and this really caught me off guard. I love this spot for Seattle. I was not ready to believe in Tampa Bay, but I thought we saw a different version of Tom Brady in this game as well. Like, he was fired up pre-game. He's fired up after their first touchdown drive. We kind of, it feels like we've seen a frustrated, subdued Tom Brady for much of the year. This reminded me of Tom Brady from a couple years ago.
Yep. I don't want to over-conclude things about his personal life, but it is out there as a theory. But yeah, I mean, they look good now. They get the bye week, so I get some time to rest and recover. Both them and Seattle do. So, but nonetheless, don't forget about Rachaad White. He's only 24% rostered in ESPN leagues, 44% rostered in Yahoo leagues. So now, worth a look, and worth looking to see what people do with him this week, just because they're trying to find guys to pick up this week. Yeah. So every once in a while, a viable player gets cut just because they're on bye. So watch their drops pretty closely. Before I move on, every one of our podcasts are hosts on the Blue Wire Network. Thus, we'll play their ads. Thank you for your indulgence in listening to the Blue Wire Network ads. And thank you to Blue Wire Network for hosting our podcast. Let's move on. Talk about the day slate here. Hey, let's get right into the game of the century of the week, Minnesota and Buffalo. Incredible game, lots of back and forth, improbable finish, crazy catches in this one here. Just a nutty game.
Unbelievable game by Justin Jefferson. Unbelievable game by Kirk Cousins, who, the final line, 30 for 50, nothing fantastic there, but 357 yards. Did have the 2 picks, but made some insane throws at the end of this game to deliver Minnesota the victory. I mean, I'm sure you saw the stat, 9 of Justin Jefferson's 10 catches. If you look at next gen stats, had a completion percentage of under 50% as far as on average. This is not a complete pass. 9 of the 10 were basically incredible catches by Justin Jefferson, including the one that is an all-time, contested catch on a 4th down, no less. Got to have it 4th down. But to me, the far bigger takeaway here is I'm worried about the Bills. And Josh Allen has not been a very good quarterback now for 3 straight weeks. You still see the highs. The wow throws are absolutely there for Josh Allen. But 6 picks in the last 3 weeks, 5 of those in the red zone. He lost a fumble in this game as well. The decision-making has been horrendous by Josh Allen. I mean, it's just he completely loses his mind when he gets inside the 20, and we saw it yet again where it looked like Buffalo was driving to win this game late. and then just throws an inexcusable pick, nowhere near a receiver. I mean, it was
No.
picked from the start. It's been baffling, and the elbow didn't really seem to bother him. I don't think you can use that as an excuse. I mean, the amount of just absolute killer mental mistakes from Josh Allen has been astonishing, and they've now gone 3 straight games without a touchdown in the second half. Have the Bills?
Yeah, exactly. They had the game in hand. They were rolling earlier. Like, okay, Minnesota, there was your cute little 7-1. Now you're entering the big leagues, and Minnesota rose up. I've been asking all year. I don't know if Minnesota is actually really that good.
This is an all-time run of luck. I'll tell you that. I mean, it feels like every single one of their wins has been lucky, but if you do it 8 times.
But this is also, I mean, this is a good team to be able to do that.
Oh, of course.
Also, and good coaching. The coaching change. I was talking with Alan Staslowski earlier too. It's not just that the Bills are benefiting; the Rams are hurting. They're missing McConnell. I think I think that's one of the other takeaways I'll have from this here. But I mean, Josh Allen, fantasy day wise, 330 yards, 84 yards rushing. I mean, it's crazy. But the fumble 6, just a killer play. I mean, that was a weird exchange at the snap. Not sure who to blame on that one there. I don't have the level of expertise to say that, but that you can't have that. You just can't have that.
You absolutely cannot have that. You cannot have the interception on a 4th down, or excuse me, I think they went for it on 4th down late. Yeah, 4th and 2 at the 7. They kind of try to do the rollout play that Josh Allen, it feels like, has thrown like 5 picks on this exact play this year. You need to get points there. I just don't understand. You're up 10, with about 10 minutes left in the 4th quarter. Obviously it came back to bite them, as it always seems like it does in these scenarios. But just you don't even have to get the touchdown. I just don't understand. Like they're overly aggressive for no reason. I just don't see like why. It feels like every week.
If they get the touchdown, they're up 3 scores. So
sure. I don't know. Like how many? This exact play has failed them multiple times this year. You feel like you would learn your lesson here. It feels like they're pushing to run up the score rather than to win the game. I guess, or like kind of prove something to themselves. Like we feel like we deserve a touchdown on this drive, so we're going for it no matter what. And some of these plays are just you can tell right away. The first option's not there. Josh Allen's panicking. He's drifting. All of a sudden, he's at the sideline and he has to toss it up because it's 4th down.
Right.
I just don't know what to think of the Bills, because the highs, when they're at their best, I still think they're the best team in the league, and it's going to be tough to wash that away. Like Josh Allen running the ball in this game, unbelievable. Had some insane 3rd down bailout rushes. I mean, he's bowling over guys. So it's not like he's not playing well overall, but the lows have just been so low at this point. Like I think he's played himself out of the MVP race at this point. I mean, unless Mahomes Jalen Hurts,
a lot of football left to play.
Tua's 4-1, by the way, to win MVP, which I'm going to need to reckon with that personally. But I shouldn't say he's played himself out of the race, but he certainly played himself, out of that top 3. Like he needs to earn it back. I think it's no longer Josh Allen's MVP to lose, which I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Fair. I'll buy into that a little bit there. Bills are 6-3. They're a half game behind the Chiefs, but they beat the Chiefs. They're a game behind the Chiefs, I should say. They're a half game behind the Dolphins, who they also lost to. So there's that. They're tied with the Jets, who they've lost to, and they're tied with the Ravens and the Titans, who they smoked. And Titans are the one. Like, how are they there? It's crazy. It's really crazy about that. But yeah, they definitely have to. They've got to right the ship. They don't want to have to be on the road. That's the thing.
Exactly.
They want to be able to have their fortress in the playoffs there. Going to Kansas City, I know they exercise some demons with the regular season win there, but they don't want to face the Chiefs in Kansas City in January. They just don't.
No, you're right. I mean, they've been through that before, and it did not go well. That is for sure. It kind of feels like the whole regular season is just building toward them avoiding that matchup, and they've played themselves into a hole. And maybe in retrospect, we should have taken away a little bit more from how lackadaisical and kind of out of sorts they looked against Green Bay a few weeks ago. And of course, they won that game. I mean, Green Bay didn't play all that well either, but that second half against Green Bay kind of felt like when things have turned now for Buffalo with the benefit of hindsight. 2 more things, then we can move on. So one, Nyheim Hines played 6 snaps in this game. Very concerning. I think, at this point, obviously you got to consider dropping him. I mean, it was a very Devin Singletary heavy game. He played 54 snaps, James Cook 13. Again, only 6 for Hines. And then going back to the fumble snap, weird play. You're pinned at your goal line. I don't know what the right call is, but do you think you just take the safety there? We've seen that. We've seen a couple teams do that at this point. You either you just take the shotgun snap, run around, and throw it out the back of the end zone. Like, is that the safest play?
It might be. It might be. I'm trying to think.
There's
How much
41
time?
seconds on the clock. You're up 3.
41. Yeah.
You're giving Minnesota would have time for maybe a quick drive and a field goal. So I get not doing it.
Yeah, because then a field goal beats you.
Right. Right.
That's the tricky part there. But man, and the fact that they couldn't stop Jefferson. I mean,
yes, that's the thing is you're thinking all we need here is if we kick it back to them, they get the ball with probably 25 to 30 seconds. The one thing that beats us is a long jump ball, and we've already seen Jefferson do that 5 times today. So maybe that's in the back of their mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not. Yeah, I think that's the other thing I think about there for sure. But yeah, yeah, tough call. But man, there's a lot of weird things happening at that end of the game there. But that's a possibility. I could see that working too. Viking side, Dalvin Cook ran, had the huge run, obviously the 81-yarder, but 14 for 119. They could use him a little bit more maybe and get the pressure off of Cousins, who had to throw the ball 50 times. Cousins had 2 picks, was sacked 4 times. Jefferson balled out, obviously. You mentioned the stat about the catchable passes there. So that's kind of crazy. But aside from that, I mean, they not a whole lot else out of this offense. Hawkinson got 10 targets. KJ Osborne had 11 targets in this game, did very little with those targets, and Thielen did very little.
Yeah, Thielen had a couple big catches for first downs, but yeah, I mean, overall 5 for 49, no touchdowns. It felt like the Jefferson show, and rightfully so. I mean, he's now vaulted himself kind of right back into contention to lead the league in receiving yards, right there behind Tyreek Hill. And Hill, Diggs, Jefferson, and Kupp. I mean, those guys, those have been the big 4 in fantasy. Devontae Adams not too far behind, but we'll get to Cooper Kupp in a little bit, but could potentially be missing time here. I think Hill, Diggs, Jefferson. That's probably going to end up being the big 3, but by the end of the year.
We'll see how Chase comes back from the injury, though, too. I'm not willing to write him off of that top. In fact, hey, give me a little bit of a discount, because if he fully heals, I mean, that's obviously a huge if, but the production will be there otherwise. Okay, Detroit, Chicago. Shocking finish to this one here. 21 points in the fourth quarter for the Lions. Big pick 6 in this game. Justin Fields did Justin Fields things again. 147 rushing yards and 2 rushing TDs, 2 passing TDs. Offense is rolling right now for the Bears. Defense still could use a little bit of work. Precious little work out of DeAndre Swift. Did get the touchdown, but yardage wise, he had a 9-yard run, yet he was 6 for 6. So you tell me. I mean, that's I don't think that's doing too much work there. And in the passing game, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that's it. That's the list.
Yeah, this is a game that I don't think Detroit deserved to win by any means. Chicago was very much in control, and you mentioned Justin Fields doing Justin Fields things. That pick 6, that was kind of early season Justin Fields. That was just a brutal play, an awful decision by Fields. He's rolling out, he's panicked, he just overthrows Cole Kmet, just wide open Jeff Okudah for a pick 6, and that completely flipped the game. And to Chicago's credit, they came back, they got the ball back, immediately scored a touchdown, but they missed the extra point. And as always, missing the extra point, especially late in the game, always feels like it's going to matter. The defense cannot quite hold up. And, I think game script wise, this went about as we expected, right? Like, these are the games that Chicago's just going to play the rest of the year. I mean, their last 3 have been 49-29, 35-32, and now 31-30. I mean, it's great for fantasy. I mean, Fields continues to just be a complete monster. He was the number 1 quarterback yet again this week. I'm still kind of having trouble valuing him in real life versus fantasy, but I mean, fantasy wise, he's an every week start at this point. I mean, 100%. that was probably the case last week as well. I know we discussed it a little bit on XM, but I mean, I don't know what else you need to see from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I still probably start Mahomes ahead of him every week. And Allen, and then Hurts versus Fields is a debate, but right. I mean that's it. I mean that's really it. I start him over Lamar right now, and I don't feel too bad about that decision. And it's weird because they both suffer from a lack of support in terms of like talented players around him. He's really resuscitated Cole Kmet's season. Kmet is now how high do you put him on the tight end rankings for the rest of the season?
That's a good question. Let me pull up the ranks here. So, I mean, over the last 5 weeks. Yeah, Komet doesn't rank quite as high. Oh, he's number 2. Excuse me. I completely missed him. I'm like, where is he?
You're like,
he's number 2 behind only Kelsey over the last 5 weeks. And by the way, Justin Fields is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy by 20 fantasy points since week 5. Komet's right there. I mean, he's for sure an every week start at this point. That goes without saying. I think Kelsey's obviously ahead of him. I think healthy Mark Andrews is ahead of him. We'll see when we get that. I would still put Dallas Goedert ahead of him. Zach Ertz, who knows what's going on there? It looked like he went out of that game against Arizona. I'll have to check the follow-up there. It looks like he's going to miss multiple weeks. So,
yep.
I mean, Cole Kmet, borderline top 5 right now.
Yeah, I think so. He's hovering right there. 7 targets, the 2 touchdowns, and, could have had more. So it's looking good. One thing about the Justin Fields explosion is it's hurt the running backs for the Bears. Now, Khalil Herbert got hurt in this game. Mm-hmm. Herbert was better than Montgomery, though. 10 for 57. Montgomery, 9 for 37. Neither of them were involved in the passing game. And that's one thing. When you got a running quarterback, you don't have the checkdowns. You don't have the dump offs there. So that part of the game is just gone.
Yeah, that's a good point. The most quarterbacks, when you're flushed out, you're scrambling around, you're looking for that check down, that dump off. That's not Justin Fields. He's tucking and running that pretty much every single time. Ended up having 13 carries in this game. Still not much of an impact from Chase Claypool as well. Only had 1 catch in this contest and only played 19 snaps. They're still favoring Darnell Mooney. They're still favoring Equanimous St. Brown, Dante Pettis, Byron Pringle. All those guys played more snaps than Chase Claypool.
And Pringle's been hurt all year. And all of a sudden, he's getting more snaps than Claypool. That was bizarre.
That was strange.
I mean, you figure after a week and a half, that there's plenty of time now for Claypool, but I guess not. Any other takeaways on the Lions side here?
I mean, this felt like somewhat of a kind of a reemergence game from Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was amazing those first 2.5 weeks of the season. Much like DeAndre Swift, kind of felt like he was back, but not really back. Was very much back in the mix in this game. 10 for 119 on 11 targets. This was a pretty nice game from Jared Goff, who clearly is not the long-term answer in Detroit, but had been coming off of a string of pretty rough games after an encouraging start to the year. Did not have an interception in this game. That's really all you're asking of Jared Goff at this point, but I didn't think he played well against Green Bay. I mean, he was pretty disastrous against Miami and Dallas and New England. So, Detroit's season, I don't think this is really going to be a team that threatens for the playoffs at this point, but 2 straight wins now against NFC North opponents.
Yeah, for sure. For all the good vibes from Justin Fields and the Bears, they're 3-7. The Lions are 3-6.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The Lions, I mean, this in long term, this might have hurt them. It hurt them, their chances of getting their franchise quarterback. But again, players and coaches don't tank. Front offices tank. Owners tank. So always remember that because they're always going to battle. All right, let's hear from our title sponsor, No House Advantage. No House Advantage is sponsoring all of our podcasts throughout the rest of the football season. They are changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play and pick 'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHAWIRE. That's NHAWIRE at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the App Store to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. You also won't want to miss out on Nick Whalen talking about his favorite team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, as you said, you feel pretty comfortable with how this game went.
I feel pretty comfortable about how this game went because Trevor Lawrence played well for the second straight week. We said coming in, he's not really had 2 good back-to-back games in a row ever in his career. And obviously he's only 1.5 years in. So we're still working with a relatively small sample, but I thought he played really well in this game. He was under duress, did take 5 sacks, but made some really, really nice throws, kept the Jags in this game when the defense, really didn't have a ton of answers for Kansas City. And the Chiefs were just on cruise control here. Mahomes throws for 4 touchdowns. Kansas City ends up turning it over 3 times in this game. The Jags did not turn it over. They also went onside kick to begin the game and got that. So essentially +4 in the turnover margin. They're the only team this season to be +3 or better in turnovers and not win the game. And let alone, not only did they not win, they didn't even cover. They lost this game by 10 points. But I never expected the Jags to win this game. Never really expected them to compete all that much. But I came away relatively encouraged. I think this was a really tough spot for them going to Arrowhead, going up against Patrick Mahomes. And, again, at this point in the year, the dreams of winning the AFC South that I thought was alive in week 4 is gone at this point. And to me, it's just about developing Trevor Lawrence and, reading some stuff after the game, kind of being on Jags Twitter as I want to do. A lot of encouraging stuff. Normally when you lose a game by 10, it's all doom and gloom, but I really do feel like Trevor Lawrence has turned somewhat of a corner. I'm not ready to say he's just a great quarterback and he's going to be the next, Joe Burrow type of development story. But these last 2 weeks have been really good for Trevor Lawrence. And to me, that's really what matters at this point.
Yeah, they almost got the backdoor cover.
They
were down 27-10 entering the 4th. So they got the touchdown, but 1 point off. So yay me, because I was on the Chiefs. But nonetheless, you're right. Chiefs turned the ball over 3 times, the interception and 2 fumbles. Pacheco was the man, 16 for 82, did lose the fumble. And if you're looking for a lead lining in the silver cloud, no targets in the passing game. So he's not involved. But CEH played 4 snaps. He's done and buried right now in this offense.
Yeah, that was huge. We finally, kind of got the the follow-up, I guess, to the report from 3 weeks ago that Pacheco is going to be the guy. And even after the fumble, he was still the guy. They weren't taking reps away. He wasn't in the doghouse. That's good to see. Jerick McKinnon essentially operated as the number 2, obviously a guy who's involved a ton in the passing game. He had 8 targets, had some pretty nice plays, catches and runs and, juking out guys as he does. So 24 snaps for McKinnon, just 4 for CEH, like you said, 35 for Isaiah Pacheco. We saw Kadarius Toney make some plays in this game. Had a touchdown, only played 28 snaps, ran 17 routes on those 28 snaps, was targeted 5 times. But we talked about him as kind of a luxury piece for the Chiefs. That's exactly what it felt like. And I think he had to do a little bit more because Juju Smith-Schuster went out of this game after taking a really, really brutal hit to the head from, I believe it was Andre Cisco for the Jag. I don't know how he wasn't ejected from this game. That was about as cut and dry as it gets. Yeah,
and we saw an ejection in the Sunday night game on something that was a little bit more debatable.
I thought so too. Yeah, I thought Cisco was gone for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And remember, they played this game without Mecole Hardman, so Toney kind of took over that role. He had 2 carries also for 33 yards. So he's not available in too many leagues. That's the one thing. But if he doesn't happen to be available, of course, snatch him up. If Juju doesn't play this upcoming week, that could be a pretty valuable spot. They have some time to game plan them in a little bit more. That game got flexed to the Sunday night game at the Chargers. Took away Bengals Steelers Titanic clash off of that there. So only 2 of the 3 road division games are in prime time. I'm fine with that, by the way. I'm grateful.
I think the Steelers are to blame for that more than the Bengals. That's for sure. And losing Jamar Chase takes some star power away. You're right about Toney. I mean, in competitive leagues, he's not out there, but he's still rostered in less than half of ESPN leagues, 47.5% right now. So if you're playing in a couple casual leagues, some work leagues, go out and grab Kadarius Toney. I'd be pretty surprised if Juju plays next week. I mean, again, you never want to read too far into it. He was able to get up off his own, off the field, get off under his own power. But that was one too, where right away you could see his hand was kind of stuck in one position, kind of reminiscent of the Tua injury. Just not something you like to see. And I would not be surprised, given how much depth they have at receiver. Obviously, if it ends up just being something that looks more severe than it was, he could play. But I think they're going to give him a longer runway here.
Yeah. MVS actually got checked out at one point in this game too. They could have really been down wide receivers there. So of course, Noah Gray scores. Of course, they find a way because Mahomes is a cheat code. But Valdez-Scantling could be someone that's interesting next week too. Only 4 targets this past week, but if Juju's out, if Hardman's out, he's also a guy you should consider. And there's a lot of quality receivers out. The Miami receivers, the Seattle receivers, Tampa Bay receivers, and Christian Kirk on the Jaguars too. So there's a lot of good wide receivers on bye this upcoming week.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for managers who are without Marvin Jones this week. You're not gonna have Jamal Agnew. It's gonna be brutal.
Yeah, exactly. What do you do? Indeed. But looking at the Jaguars, we were talking earlier how we're a little concerned about Travis Etienne being able to hold up under such a heavy workload. He only got 11 carries, got 3 catches on 3 targets. I kind of thought they'd use him a little bit more. Maybe because they fell behind so fast so early. Maybe that got scripted out a little bit, but still, got to get your best player more touches.
I think that's exactly what happened. They obviously tried to catch the Chiefs off guard with that onside kick. I think they wanted to go up early and kind of be able to play their game and use ETN. And all of a sudden they're down 20-7 at halftime, and that's not the case. So yeah, I mean, Trevor Lawrence throw the ball 40 times. I don't think that's really the plan. The previous 2 games he threw it 31 times. I think that's closer to what the Jags are looking for. And I think you're right. It was just a game script situation for ETN. Like the snap load was still there, 49 snaps to 15 for JaMychal Hasty, who's very clearly the number 2 guy at this point. I know at some point their GM Trent Baalke said at some point they want to take a look at Snoop Connor. I don't know what that really means. I mean, for fantasy purposes, I don't think it means anything as long as ETN is healthy. But I think they just had to play from behind, so they had to get away from ETN. And in some ways, it did feel like he was due for a game like this, a little bit of regression after some huge weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to Miami, Cleveland. This was a blowout. Cleveland got the early score, and you're like, okay, this could be a game. Not so much. Miami just took care of business in this game.
Yeah, they really did. And, Cleveland came out, goes up 7-0. You're thinking, all right, this is going to be a back and forth game. Cleveland can run the ball on Miami. Miami can throw the ball on Cleveland. And, Nick Chubb has the fumble on Cleveland's second drive. From then on, I mean, the route was essentially on. Miami up 17-7 at the half. They get the ball to start the third quarter, march right down, go up 24-7. And really at that point, you kind of felt like it was over. I mean, the offense was clicking at a level that is as best as we've seen all year from Miami. Tua goes 25 of 32 for 285 and 3 touchdowns. And, the passing game, that's been there all year. But this really felt like the best mix of run and pass that we've seen from Miami all year. So, not only do Jalen Waddle 4 for 66, Tyreek Hill gets in the end zone, like those guys are eating, but Jeff Wilson 17 for 119 and a touchdown. Mostert had a couple long runs as well. I mean, this Miami offense, man, it is really, really scary. I think you look back at that game where they had the big comeback against Baltimore. They beat the Bills the next week, and we're thinking, all right, the Dolphins are a little frisky. I mean, this offense, it's reminiscent of Cincinnati last year. Like when they get hot, they could beat anybody. I saw on NFL Network this morning, I forget who it was, compared them to, I think it was that 2016 Falcons team that got really hot midseason and ran all the way to the Super Bowl. I mean, you could start to see the blueprint for Miami. It's been really, really impressive.
Yep. It's nice having the bankable wide receivers and Tua every single week. Although it's funny, Waddle was 4 for 66, Tyreek Hill 5 for 44. This is their lowest output in a while. But guess what? That's because they were winning by so much. They could run the ball. I mean, frankly, I'm a little surprised Cleveland came out so flat. I mean, they had a big rousing win on Halloween, had the bye week, getting healthy. All right, let's go.
Ward back. Yeah. I'm with you. And I don't know if they came out flat. I mean, they scored the touchdown on their first drive, but that was it. It felt like they had their game script, and once those plays were done, it was like, okay, well, maybe we weren't prepared for this avalanche that is the Miami offense. I mean, 31, 35, 39 points in the last 3 weeks for Miami. I think we're seeing what a healthy Tua can do for this team versus Teddy Bridgewater or Skylar Thompson. They went through that swoon kind of in the early part of the season after the Tua injury, but man, this team is rolling right now. And they have the bye coming up, and then after that, home for the Houston Texans. So you love that matchup. Dolphins at Niners in week 12. That is going to be, as the kids say, Jeff, a banger of a matchup.
Nice. I'm always good to get caught up on the lingo too. Thank you for that. Appreciate you there. Kareem Hunt, nothing, 6 for 9 on the ground, and then 1 catch, only 1 target. Amari Cooper got 3 targets. This is supposed to be a smash matchup for him, and he got 3 targets. Donovan Peoples-Jones was the main guy for them.
Yeah, I mean, and even game script wise too. Like going in, it seemed like a great matchup for Amari Cooper. Yeah, and you're playing behind. You would think, all right, this is even better if you're an Amari Cooper owner. But This was not a great game for Jacoby Brissett. Just kind of looked a little off throughout the day. Ended up being sacked 3 times. Tua was untouched, by the way. Really no pressure at all from this Cleveland defensive line. And yeah, nice day for Peoples-Jones, but yeah, big time letdown from Amari Cooper. And even Nick Chubb, he did have the typical fourth quarter touchdown. One of my buddies texted me and said, Nick Chubb has to lead the NFL in meaningless fourth quarter touchdowns since he entered the league. I looked it up. He has 19 fourth quarter touchdowns of 20 yards or more since entering the league. That is far and away a league high. So if it seems like every week the Browns are like down 3 touchdowns and then Nick Chubb rips off like a 30-yard touchdown, it's because it seemingly is happening like once every 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it's when they're winning too, but yes. And that's the prototypical wear the opponent down, keep grinding sort of run that makes him such a great player. But yeah, and that, hey, I have good amount of exposure to Nick Chubb. I was very happy to see that. Saved his day, because otherwise it was a disastrous day for him too. Less said about Cleveland, the better. I think that's a good rule of thumb in life. Let's move on. We'll talk about the Giants and the Texans next. I know that be still your beating heart, but before we do that, though, quick note from our friends at Monkey Knife Fight. Football is officially back on Monkey Knife Fight with all the NFL action that you're looking for. And if college football is more your speed, they've got plenty of that too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win, daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. So what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. All right. So the Giants, they won 24-16, a near, Houston tried to kind of sneak in late to try to prevent the cover. But honestly, this was a game where Houston just doesn't have the talent. I think they play hard. I think they keep things close for a while. We saw it against Philly. But at the end of the day, they just don't have a whole lot of talent out there.
Yeah, I mean, they're a relatively well-coached team. They put up a fight in the first half, at least, against Philly last week. I don't think anybody really expected that. And, this game was probably closer than it should have been. The Giants, it always felt like they were in control, but they needed a couple big plays. They needed a couple turnovers. They had a fumble and an interception on back-to-back possessions in the second half. The interception coming deep in their own territory. I mean, Brian Dable was fired up early in this game. He's shouting at his offensive line. Clearly, I think they expected to play better than they did, at least early on. But the defense showed up, I thought, for the Giants, forcing 3 straight 3-and-outs to begin the game for Houston. Took the offense a little bit of time to get going, but back-to-back touchdown drives to begin the second half. That was big. And, from then on, the Giants just do what the Giants do every single week and just kind of bleed you out slowly. It wasn't all that impressive. There's not a lot of big plays. We saw a couple more drops for Kenny Golladay in this game. But as expected, it was a Saquon Barkley day. Ended up being a Darius Slayton day, thanks to a long touchdown. But this was exactly what you expect from the Giants. Daniel Jones, 13 of 17, 197, 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's the recipe.
Yep. I did not rank Kenny Golladay in the value meter this week. And I'm feeling pretty good about that because he had the really bad drop and then you never saw him again. He was gone. Didn't even get back on the field there. Wan'Dale Robinson, I like the idea of Wan'Dale Robinson better than the actual production from him. I'm stealing your line there, but Adam Weber, you were asking about which player to drop for Eli Mitchell coming off IR. I drop Wan'Dale. I can't see myself starting him.
Yeah, again, I love the idea of him. I think every team, like every fan, every fantasy player, like you want these guys who are these gadgety, dynamic, like any play could turn into a touchdown type of guys, but he's just not in the right offense for that. I mean, that's not really what the Giants do. This is by no means an offense that creates big plays. And he just kind of feels like if he was on another team that maybe did a little bit more downfield, you would like it. But, the snaps are there, the routes are there, the targets are not. You play 52 snaps, you get targeted twice. I think that tells you all you need to see.
I agree. And the volume's not there. And maybe if the game script's different and they're playing from behind, it's a little bit different. But they asked him to throw 17 times. It's like trying to invest in an Atlanta quarterback or Atlanta wide receiver. It's just the volume's not there.
Well, and the Giants just don't play from behind, for better or for worse. Like I still don't think this is a very good 7-2 team, when you compare it to other teams that have this kind of record, but they find ways every week. It doesn't seem to matter who the opponent is. They're at least in every game. The Seattle game was somewhat of a no-show, but every team has a couple of those. And, they get Detroit next week. You like your chances there. At Dallas the following week on a Thursday. I believe that's a Thanksgiving game. The short week, who knows? It's not a great matchup, but then Commanders, Eagles, Commanders. So, 3 of your next 5 matchups you love on paper.
Yeah. Although those, division games, you never know, but those can turn
Commanders
out
have
to be
frisky.
Yeah. Commanders, by the way, get the Texans next week. So we'll see about that one there for the Texans side of things. Nico Collins, 10 targets, most targeted player, got the touchdown for the Texans. Dameon Pierce runs hard every time we say that, but there's just not a whole lot of offense to be had there otherwise.
No, not really. I mean, Brandon Cooks was back in the mix, didn't do a whole lot. Pierce had the fumble too. That was pretty brutal. Was running really well, fumbled it, inside the 10-yard line of the Giants. To me, that's kind of when you felt like the game was really over. I mean, the Texans kept kind of battling back. Every time the Giants would score, they would answer, and it's back to a 1-score game. But those are the kind of mistakes really that have haunted Houston all year.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And, and that also killed Pierce's chances for like getting the touchdown, which would have really made his fantasy day. He got the yardage, but other than that, I mean, it's tough. You're not getting a whole lot of the passing game with him either. Similar to some other top running backs there. All right, Pittsburgh and New Orleans. Not a lot of offense to be had in this one, but the Steelers did rediscover the running game.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Najee Harris back from the dead, 20 for 99 in this game. Wasn't able to get a touchdown. Like George Pickens and Kenny Pickett had the 2 rushing touchdowns for Pittsburgh on the day. Pickett on a sneak. I mean, Najee Harris was tackled like an inch from the goal line, and watching that game, just begging him to get over there. But I'm also never going to fault a team for running a QB sneak because it seems like it works every time. That was the case in this game. Pittsburgh needed the score there. George Pickens, nice to kind of use him in a different role, getting him out in space, had a couple of carries in this game. Deontay Johnson had a couple of nice catches. I still didn't think Kenny Pickett played all that well.
No.
Had some big scrambles. That was kind of the big advantage having Pickett in this game. But overall, took 6 sacks, didn't make a ton of great throws downfield, missed some receivers. So I remain very skeptical on what that's going to be long term. But man, it feels like the Saints have kind of entered a free fall here. I had that big win over the Raiders a few weeks ago. That felt like
smaller.
That felt like a stop the bleeding win at the time. They had just lost to the Bengals and the Cardinals, and you're like, okay, I mean, that was a dominating win. And that means nothing now, given what the Raiders have done since. And the Saints completely no-showed against Baltimore in primetime last week. And give them credit, they did rally back to tie this game at the half, but did nothing on offense in the second half, and some more poor play from Andy Dalton, who I think at this point we might see Jameis whenever he's ready to go. I think it might be time to at least give him a try.
Could be the whole Sam Ellinger is our starter for the rest of the season. Okay, maybe not really sort of story here.
Dalton's played his way out of it, I think.
I think so too. And this wasn't even a primetime game, so can't blame that. And it really, Alvin Kamara got 8 carries. Remember when he was getting tons of carries? He had 4 targets in the passing game. Just, he's bottled up when the team is bottled up like that. They ran 45 snaps. The Steelers ran 79. That
checks out. If you watch this game, it felt like the Saints never had the ball.
Yep. 2 interceptions for Dalton, 2 sacks. Taysom Hill had a nothing burger. And that's the thing about Taysom Hill too. When you're rostering him at tight end, okay, great. You have him at tight end.
Yep.
The floor is lava. I mean, there's a very bad floor for him, and this is it.
Yep, 100%. And this Pittsburgh defense, with TJ Watt back, they were ready. I think this, like you said, you made this your best bet. So we kind of saw this coming. I wasn't quite ready to go to that territory, but I know the Saints ended up. I think this line closed at like Saints -1, 1.5. But it really did feel like this was a good spot for Pittsburgh, and they delivered for sure. Yep. 19 plays, by the way, for the Saints in the second half. 19 plays. That is horrific. And that comes with, 3 turnovers on 3 straight drives, including going out on a 4-and-out when they absolutely needed it. And we should say Chris Boswell's on IR for the Steelers. Matthew Wright, I believe, their backup kicker, missed 2 very makeable field goals, including one that was under 40 yards in the second half. So that in some ways kind of kept the Saints alive in this game. It could have been a more lopsided result in favor of the Steelers.
Heinz Field, notoriously a tough place to kick, but still, come on.
Yeah, one of them was a 38-yarder.
Yeah, exactly. We might be seeing he might be Matthew Wrong for them, and we might be going to somebody else next. And they need Mr. Right now while Boswell's out.
I'm not going to hold either of those puns against you.
Thank you.
But we should probably move on.
Yeah, we probably should. All right, Tennessee and Denver. Yay! Another good offensive battle here. Woo!
Next.
Tennessee. Okay, Mike Vrabel is a hell of a coach. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, they get outgained every week. You look at this team, and you're like, where's the juice? There's no juice here. Derrick Henry was kept contained, 19 for 53. Tennessee finds a way to win every week. They find a way to win and cover. Bless their little hearts. It was not. Ryan Tannehill actually kind of came up big, 255 yards. It was the Nick Westbrook-Ikini game. We'll always have that, and he had a big game. 5 for 119, 2 touchdowns. There was nothing else in this game. But Tennessee finds a way to win. And their defense, it's their defense. Their defense is just every week. They're just nasty, gnarly teams. They had the one big bad game against Buffalo, but otherwise their defense shows up every week, even when they lose.
Yeah, they really do. And I thought they would miss Justin Simmons maybe a little bit more in this game. I took Tennessee to win, thought Denver could cover in what would be a really, really close game. And yeah, it was a touchdown result. Tennessee did cover, but this was close throughout. And you really didn't know, going into the fourth quarter, how this was going to break. Denver had a drive to tie at the end of the game, of course, ends in a brutal Russell Wilson interception. It was a 4th down play. He had to throw it. It was 20 seconds left, but it feels like that script has played out so many times already this season for Denver. But you're right. You got to tip your cap to the Tennessee defense. I mean, they've won 6 out of their last 7 now since that blowout win against the Bills, where, at that point you're thinking like, man, this team might be headed for a hard reset. And you beat the Raiders by 2, you beat the Colts by 7, the Commanders by 4, the Colts by 9, the Texans by 7, lose to the Chiefs by 3, beat the Broncos by 7. I mean, all these games have been razor thin margins. Yep. And they're just a team that you trust. Denver is the complete opposite, right? Like they're driving with a chance to tie the game, and you're thinking,
how are they going to blow it?
I have no faith. They're going to blow this. When Tennessee has the ball in those situations, you just trust it, even if it's Nick Westbrook-Ikini ripping off 63-yard touchdowns. They just keep finding ways. This is not a talented roster at all. I think in a lot of ways they are kind of a mirror image of the New York Giants.
Yeah, not a talented offensive roster. The defense is loaded. They were missing 4 starters, and they still sacked Russell Wilson 6 times. Had the interception. He put the ball on the ground 3 times. They recovered all of them, but still, that's a good way to break up an offense. So he had the yardage, 286 passing yards, but took 42 attempts to do so, 21 of 42, very inefficient. Had the Jalen Virgil big play, which we all had on our bingo card. That's the one touchdown. Jerry Jeudy got hurt in this game early. He's out multiple weeks, it looks like. That's bad news. Cortland Sutton, he got 11 targets, so he kind of resuscitated his value a little bit there, but not a lot to recommend out of here. Greg Dulcich, I started him in a number of places. This was a disappointment. The backfield, nobody had more than 9 carries. Murray had more carries than anyone. Nobody did anything there, though. Not much to recommend from this Denver offense.
No, it looks like it's the same old Broncos. And, maybe I was grasping at straws a little bit, saying like, did they maybe discover something in that final drive against the Jags in London? That felt like a potential turning point for a team that just needs something this season to get that offense going. And I think the answer is no. This offense looked exactly the same as it has the previous 9 weeks. And they get the Raiders next week. That's the only real positive, I guess. I mean, good luck picking that game. Yikes. But I saw a crazy stat the other day on Twitter. I guess it was yesterday. The Broncos would be 8-1 if they could just score 18 points in regulation in every game. I mean, we're not asking for much here. Like the defense remains. No. I thought the defense once again played really well. You can't. They're asking so much of this defense. It's just you're off the field, then 4 plays later you're back out there. This game started with 9 straight punts, by the way. I mean, both defenses played really well. I feel bad for those Broncos defenders because this has been a Super Bowl caliber defense 100%. And the offense has just not even come close to living up to the billing.
No, they haven't. So yikes. I don't know what their solution is for them going forward, but it's not great. Not great at all. I mean, I guess the Raiders are your solution, but they're also, they're 3-6. I mean, they're in a tough spot here. Tennessee goes on the road to face Green Bay, though, so we'll see. We're about to talk about the Packers, but this feels like a tougher game than it did 2 weeks ago.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I have not looked at the lines next week at all. I cannot wait to see what that Broncos Raiders line is. Maybe Vegas just takes it off the board. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe so. So there you go. Let's talk about the Packers.
Right.
Packers, big comeback win over the Cowboys. Cowboys had them. It was 28-14. Packers found a way to do what they haven't done all season long. Throw the ball when they needed to.
Yeah, they did the unthinkable and overcame yet another Amari Rodgers muff punt, or a fumble, I should say, on a punt. Yeah, I think that's his like 7th or 8th total fumble on a punt in his career. It's just been disastrous. This is the second time this year that it felt like that completely flipped a game. And Dallas controlled this game throughout, at least on the scoreboard. It maybe wasn't all that convincing, and obviously they end up losing this game. But Dak throws it through back-to-back interceptions. Both of them, seem like kind of miscommunications with receivers or with his tight end, Dalton Schultz. One of those came deep in the red zone. So to me, this just felt like Dallas kind of continuing to keep the door open for Green Bay. And it also felt like by far the worst performance of the season for this Dallas defense that has been so good and so bankable week to week. Aaron Rodgers only sacked twice in this game, really wasn't under all that much pressure, a ton of broken coverages. You let Christian Watson get loose for 3 touchdowns. A lot of those with some long air yardage. They were giving up third downs. It was an uncharacteristic performance by the Dallas defense, and also the best performance in a while for this Packers offense, which it feels like kind of finally struck that perfect balance between the run and the pass. 37 carries for AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones in this game. Only 20 pass attempts for Aaron Rodgers, but a very efficient day, 3 touchdowns, still got over 200 yards. Like, that feels like that was the recipe coming into the year, and Green Bay just hasn't been able to find ways to stick to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they didn't find themselves in long down and distance situations. Maybe they trusted the running game a little bit more on third down than they have in previous weeks. Because, Aaron Jones, so much for him being in a walking boot on Monday. We're not sure if he's going to be able to play. Oh, only 24 for 138 and a touchdown. What a day. What a day.
Yep. Yeah, he looked fantastic. Did not appear limited at all. Really, this was a pretty even game. If you dig into a lot of like the team numbers, just the basic stats, I mean, everything was pretty equal, back and forth game. Really fun to watch. That's for sure. I thought it did feel like Dallas, they got the ball first in overtime, felt like they were about to march to a score, had 2 back-to-back pretty rough penalties. Yeah. Holds that put them in a hole, and didn't love the call, to go for it on fourth down. That felt like kind of a force, although, you're at the 35, so it's not a gimme field goal by any means. But to me there, I would have looked to take the points. And, I think they also lost out on that third down play. Very much looked like Jair Alexander was in early on CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, he was early, and the holding call I thought was a little
very questionable,
shaky. And that was a big play because they had gotten a first down on that run, and all of a sudden now they got long yardage. I thought that was a big call. The decision to go for it, I have zero problem with. It was a 53-yarder, and they're like well within Maher's range. Are you kidding? 53 yards at Lambeau Field?
I'm glad you caught that too, because I was thinking like, yeah, he could make it, but like they were talking about it like it was just a gimme, well within his range. I mean, I don't care who the kicker is. 53 is not a gimme unless you're Justin Tucker.
Right. I mean, come on. And on top of that, if he misses, they actually get better field position. It was mind-boggling to me. It was not like a transparently easy decision that they were making it out to be at all. And they said it like even before like the decision on fourth, like even on third down, they're like, "Oh, this is within Maher's range." Yeah, he was making him 58 in warmups. Yeah, with no pressure, nobody rushing him. Come on. Yeah, he made 1 from 58. Stop.
Yeah,
just stop.
Had a cold day in Green Bay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, maybe the more we talk about it, it was the right call. But the way Dallas was running the ball too. I mean, they pass on 3rd and 3, and then you pass again on 4th down. And I get it. It's tough to run the ball in that 4th down situation. That's for sure. But that was what was working for them, and for them to go away from it on 3rd down, especially, knowing that you're probably going for it on 4th if you don't get it. I think you have 2 downs to pick up 3 yards with that running game and that offensive line. You got to like your chances there.
Yeah, Tony Pollard looked great. Malik Davis looked pretty good as the backup. They were running the ball very effectively in that game. Both teams were running the ball really well. All right, we haven't spent any time talking about Christian Watson yet. Obviously, this was his emergence game. 4 for 107, 3 touchdowns, 8 targets total in this game. It helps that everybody else seems to be hurt, but it was Watson. It wasn't Torrey. Torrey didn't even get a target in this one here. This is all the more remarkable that they were able to do this when they got only 3 catches for Allen Lazard, and no Torrey, no Dubs, no Randall Cobb, security blanket. Yep. Tunyon got 1 target on the game. I mean, this was a big coming out party for Watson. What do you expect from him going forward?
I think in the short term, you got to try to ride this. I mean, unfortunately, you're going into a short week against the Tennessee defense. So, you don't feel great about that matchup, although, you didn't feel great about this Cowboys matchup either. So if you could do it against the Cowboys defense, it does seem fairly projectable. I mean, he's not going to have 3 touchdowns every week. I think we know that, but
right.
I think he's probably a number 2 right now in terms of trusted receivers that are healthy for Aaron Rodgers. Like, as long as Romeo Doubs is out, I think you got to consider Christian Watson, who, by the way, is 6% owned in ESPN league. So he's absolutely available. This does probably strike me as a situation where everybody's going to go grab him, and then maybe there's a letdown in week 11. But I think the big play potential with him, that's what's so appealing, is like any play could turn into a touchdown for Christian Watson. And I don't think you could say that about anyone else on this Green Bay offense. I mean, we saw it like in overtime, Allen Lazard, great play call on 3rd down. The Packers kind of, fake one way. Lazard's wide open over the middle. And the announcers are like, it's a foot race. And Lazard is tackled at like the 20-yard line. Like, he had no chance.
And he was definitely looking both ways. Where's the hit coming from? Where's the hit coming from? Yeah,
exactly. It was almost comical. But like he just, if Christian Watson catches that, he's gone.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, Lazard was so easily caught. That was the rub. Only 9% roster in Yahoo too, by the way. So I've noticed consistently the the roster percentages are heavier on Yahoo than ESPN. For whatever it's worth. For instance, Rachaad White, 24 and 44 respectively. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 21 and 35% respectively. Pacheco is the only one that was pretty much even. The ones that I was looking at. We were doing sneaky ads with Alan earlier today, so I was looking at all those roster percentages. So yeah, but for at least 1 week, era of good feelings in Green Bay. Where there's not good feelings is with your Super Bowl champs, the LA Rams. Lost 27-17 at home to the Cardinals. Worse, they lost Cooper Kupp. And he had a horrible fantasy day before that. And, this is the 2nd time, same ankle. The talk coming out of there is not good. I think we're looking at an absence now for Kupp.
Yeah, I think the word this morning is he's going to miss, quote, some time, which for fantasy is almost the worst case scenario. Who knows what that means? And the Rams at this point, I mean, their season's close to being over. Losing this game, it was the backup quarterback off between Wolford and McCoy. And I mean, the Rams, you take away Cooper Kupp, like what's left in this offense at this point? I mean, it was ugly when Cooper Kupp was healthy, and it's going to get really rough here. I think these next couple of weeks. I don't really see it. I mean, obviously for fantasy, it's devastating because even as the Rams are losing 5 of their last 6, Cooper Kupp was still producing every single week, but I don't think this is a team that's in any position. You don't rush back, when your team is this disastrous. You got 3 wins on the year. It feels like you might be the worst team in your own division now after losing to the Cardinals. So I obviously it'd be foolish to say he's going to miss the rest of the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's out, 3-4 weeks, which is essentially the rest of the fantasy season.
Yeah. Right. And if he's out 3-4 weeks, he could be out more, because if they're out of it, so be it. I mean, they do get the Saints this week. It's a chance for him to kind of maybe make some strides back. See, the division's not out of hand. That's the thing. You look at the standings, and Seattle lost. That helps. They're 6-4. San Francisco's 5-4. San Francisco's got the hammer on them is the problem. They beat them both times, so they're really they're 2.5 games behind the Niners, not 2 games. Really, that's the one downfall of that. But 5-4 is still. They're not going to run away with it. If they put together a run, it's one thing, but the chances of them putting together a run is the tricky part. And the Cardinals are at 4-6, so it's not the division's by no means settled, but they're also at the bottom of it. We had a question. Sebastian's asking, I don't have a backup behind Ertz. Should I trade Jacoby Myers for Higbee, especially with Kupp out? Yes, absolutely. Do that trade.
Yeah, no question about that. Saw Higbee, pulling some targets late in this game after Cooper Kupp went out. I mean, obviously you got to look into Van Jefferson as well. It's going to be a gross offense. I don't think there's going to be a ton of production here going forward, but they're still going to score touchdowns. There's still going to be yards to be had. Some of it's going to trickle down to Allen Robinson. But yeah, Van Jefferson, I mean, even in deeper leagues, maybe you look into grabbing Skoranek. But again, it's going to be pretty ugly. And, much like Denver getting the Raiders next week, the Rams get the Saints. So 2 teams that feel like they're at rock bottom right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Arizona, on the other hand, they won without Kyler Murray. James Conner got 2 touchdowns. He wasn't especially efficient, 21 for 69. But he's the only back now. I have Eno Benjamin a couple places. I can wash my hands of that. He's a cut. DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore got theirs. They lost Zach Ertz, and that's a bad one there. That looks like it's going to be out multiple weeks with him. I guess pick up Trey McBride if you need to pick up someone. Allen was making the case for him earlier today. So that's something we can talk about. But they got by on this game.
They did. And it was a game that they controlled throughout. It was close early on, but Arizona led this game 17-3 at the half, and it never really felt like they let control slip. There was at one point where it was 17-10 and the Rams had a chance, and the Arizona defense stepped up, slammed the door, and then the Cardinals were able to rip off a touchdown drive that, by the way, included a wild catch by Rondale Moore on a 4th down. They went with the dreaded go route basically on 4th down the sideline. Great throw from Colt McCoy, better catch by Rondale Moore to pull it in and keep his feet down. DeAndre Hopkins, I thought, looked really good in this game. Definitely got the better of Jalen Ramsey a number of times. He goes 10 for 98, didn't get in the end zone. AJ Green also had a touchdown, just back from the dead on a classic AJ Green fade in the back of the end zone. So Arizona, I mean, obviously it feels like you got no momentum. You're without Kyler. How do you possibly win this game? But they at least they could convince themselves that they've salvaged something here. And your next 3 are against the 49ers, the Chargers, and the Pats. So best of luck there. But to me, it felt like the loser of this game. You're almost done in that division, and especially with the Rams losing Cup. I mean, it just feels like the ultimate Super Bowl hangover and kind of a run of some bad luck here. For sure.
San Francisco is going to face Arizona. Arizona faces them, but it's not a home game for Arizona. Well, it is, but it's in Mexico City on Monday night. So interesting. That's a huge game, actually, for the Cardinals. Huge game. They can throw themselves back in the mix. They lose. They drop to 4-7. They can join the Rams in being out of it there. So something to watch for that. Speaking of the Niners, that's the last game on our docket that we have to cover. They get the comeback win over the Chargers. Kind of a weird game. Chargers, I mean, if they have any playmakers at all, they win this game, I think, because they score a touchdown on one of their multiple red zone possessions where they settled for 3 points. They got shut down in the second half. Niners defense really stepped up in the second half. But, I mean, the Chargers might as well be San Diego. They'd be better in San Diego. But they couldn't find any ways to threaten them in the second half.
No, I think you're spot on that if Mike Williams or Keenan Allen play in this game, the Chargers win. Justin Herbert looked amazing in this game. He had some wow throws that just really haven't been there these last few weeks for him. Like, he got off to a great start and then had the rib injury that maybe that was still affecting him for a stretch there. But this was peak Justin Herbert. I mean, he was locked in this game, and we saw it from the start. I mean, I think everybody expected San Francisco. Debo's healthy, McCaffrey's up to speed. Like, this is the week that they take off. And right away, I mean, they get punched in the mouth. I mean, quick touchdown drive by the Chargers, big play after big play. They go 75 yards in like 3 minutes, and all of a sudden it's 7-0. And the Niners go back. They answer with a field goal of their own, but it took 8 minutes off the clock and only got 3 points. You got the Ayuk fumble on the next drive, and a couple big stands by that San Francisco defense, including after the fumble, where the Chargers are gifted fantastic field position. At that point, it felt like the offense is rolling. You hold them to a field goal there. You hold them to another field goal later in the second quarter. And, at least San Francisco was able to tack on one more touchdown before the half. And at that point, 16-10, you feel a little bit better about it. And it felt like momentum did start to swing in favor of the Niners. But yeah, it wasn't an overly well-played game. And I thought this was going to be a huge spot for McCaffrey against what's been a really soft Chargers run defense. And turned out it was Elijah Mitchell who ended up having the bigger day. Yeah, it was. He was the closer in this one. He was the second half guy. McCaffrey got the touchdown, but Mitchell looked really good on some runs. He did. Really good. And it showed that he's going to get some work. Now, I think this was also kind of a weird game flow sort of thing too. I think this was like a best case scenario for Mitchell. Yeah. But
That's a pretty good case. I mean, I think you're in like, he's a flex player. He's like, if you're a 0 running back team, he's useful. I don't know if he's a league winner. I think I saw an argument about that on Twitter because that's what people do. But he's someone that can be pretty useful. I will say that. The Chargers, I mean, the second half, they did nothing again. And if you look at Herbert's overall numbers, 5.6 yards per attempt, I mean, that's pretty awful. Yep. Again, they just couldn't go downfield at all. Herbert got nailed on that play right before halftime.
Yeah.
And you'll notice they didn't score after the half. I would watch his status closely second half. I know they had him out for those 3 plays, but I would watch his status during the week pretty closely.
Yeah, I think this could be a Matt Stafford situation from last week where, you're watching that game, you don't think twice about it, and all of a sudden he pops up and he's being evaluated for a concussion. Herbert was cleared. You have the independent spotters, you have the neurotrauma guys up in the booth that look for this. So I don't think anything nefarious is going on. And Chase Daniel did come in the game, did take a couple snaps before Herbert ended up coming back. And you could see Herbert, he seemed fine. He's kind of waving off guys like, I'm good. But that was a big time hit. Right to the head. So for sure, that's a good note for the week ahead. But nonetheless, really impressed with him. I mean, DeAndre Carter kind of ended up being the guy over Josh Palmer. It felt like the Chargers were like a foot away on a couple throws that just went a little long or a little short from ripping off a couple more big plays. But overall, given the opponent, given the lack of weapons, I actually kind of like what I saw from the Chargers, at least in the first half, because I think they are a little overmatched given all their injuries.
Yep. They got the primetime game on Sunday night against the Chiefs next week. So we'll see if they get any of those guys back. And Gerald Everett also got banged up in this game too. So watch that injury report pretty closely with the Chargers. All right, we've covered every game. Let's go ahead and hit some of these questions real quick, and then we'll sign off. Jacob says, what do you guys we talked about Watson. Never mind. We'll move on to that. We talked about this one. Okay. We covered this one already. Okay. So sorry about that. If you're not doing the visual there, you're kind of like, what is he talking about? Sorry about that. Jeff Johnson says, hey guys, should I trade Deonta Foreman and George Pickens for Jalen Waddle? Interesting trade. Because Foreman obviously is the guy in Carolina. They made that pretty clear. Waddle's on bye this week. Pickens has had his bye. I think Foreman's is still coming up later. Giving up a workhorse running back. So I think if your running back room is a little shaky, then no. You're obviously going for late in the season, trying to have the better rosters. My guess is the motivation for this one here. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, the bye complicates things. That's week 13 for Foreman. I would imagine if you're comfortable giving him up, you probably have some decent options. Obviously, I mean, Waddle, close to as high of a floor as you're going to get at receiver outside of those top 3 guys we discussed earlier. I think the thing with Foreman, too, is you don't love these next 2 matchups at Baltimore and then against that Denver defense in week 12, then the bye. So a little bit worrisome there. However, you do get, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and then I'm looking at that week 16 matchup against Detroit. That would be kind of right smack dab at the middle of the fantasy playoffs. That could be a potential smash spot for Deonta Foreman. But, we're doing a lot of projecting there. A lot could happen over the next month and a half. I'm okay with either side of this deal, to be honest. I think I would probably lean toward keeping Foreman unless I have some really good options at running back other than him.
That's the way I lean as well. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Adam says, thoughts on George Kittle rest of the season. 2 targets last night. I was starting to be in like, he is feeling pretty. I'm feeling pretty good about him. Now he was a tight end. He was a blocker as well as more than anything else. Yeah,
I don't know. The announcers last night, they were kind of all over George Kittle on the one catch. He broke a few tackles, and they're like, he's back. This is the George Kittle that we remember. I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess he looks good when he gets the ball. He's just not getting the ball all that much. It feels like he's kind of, I wouldn't say he's fallen off physically. Like when he's healthy, which is a 50-50 proposition every week, it seems. When he's healthy, he still looks like that guy. They're not targeting him that much, and maybe we're kind of trying to decide like who's the big loser between, Debo and Christian McCaffrey. Like maybe part of it is George Kittle is just going to have a reduced role going forward. I think they trust Brandon Ayuk way more than they did last year. And maybe that's hurt George Kittle as well.
Yeah. By the way, Ayuk had like the most mixed blessing game total. He had some big catches, 6 for 84, but he had the fumble and the drop in the end zone. Remember, they should have had a touchdown on that series. And
that drop could have been picked too. Hit him right in the shoulder pad.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So that was a big play in that game there.
Yep.
Yeshua says traded James Conner for Debo. What do you think about that trade?
I love Debo so much that I feel like I can't even talk about him objectively. I think I'd still rather have Debo. Big game for James Conner against the Rams, tacked on a late touchdown to really kind of run it up for fantasy purposes, but still took 21 carries to get to 69 yards. Somewhat of a fluky game, just given everything that's going on with the Rams. And before that, really hadn't done a whole lot, missed 3 games with an injury. So I prefer the Debo side.
Yep. Finally, kicker question. Robbie Gould or Jason Myers rest of season? Well, Myers is on bye this week. So I don't even think rest of the season. Get through this week and then we'll find out. So stick with Gould if you have him.
Yeah.
Myers is good, but
I'm okay with just kind of cycling through kickers if you have to. Not really trying to hold 2 kickers at any point. I don't, unless you're just really locked in or you're in a deeper league where you have a bunch of spots. I don't really love the thought of that. I mean, Jason Myers is leading the league in terms of total fantasy points among kickers. So it's been there. But I don't think any kicker to me is like lapping the field to the point where I'm not okay dropping him on a bye week.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right about that. Nick Folk is someone that I held on through his bye week.
Yeah.
I held on to McPherson and Tucker and through their bye weeks because then I'll just plug and play them the rest of the year. But I get it. there.
Yep.
And we want to have certainty. Many cases you could, it's a cyclable position unless like there's some formats where you can't make pickups after week 14. If that's the case, then you have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Any other parting thoughts, Nick?
One guy I want to bring up, and part of it is I saw a tweet, as we were kind of scrolling through here during the pod, is Paris Campbell, by the way. So last 3 games that Matt Ryan has quarterbacked for the Colts, Paris Campbell has 11 targets, 7 catches, 57 yards and a touchdown, 12 targets, 10 catches, 70 yards and a touchdown, 9 targets, 7 catches, 76 yards and a touchdown. So if it's going to be Matt Ryan going forward, there does seem to be a Paris Campbell Matt Ryan connection. And, as it feels like Michael Pittman is fading, all of a sudden Paris Campbell looking like an attractive option. So somebody to consider adding for sure. He's available in over 75% of ESPN leagues as of Monday morning.
Yeah. And I think Pittman has hope now too. I think it helps him a lot also. All right. That's going to wrap up the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for everybody for chiming in on the chat those who are streaming live. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks to No House Advantage for their sponsorship all season long. We got Joe and Jake tomorrow with waivers. On Wednesday, I'm going to have Chris Meany from FTN. So got a lot of good stuff joining us this week. Thanks for listening. Take care.